Let's talk about the injuries that you had. You obviously don't remember this, but tell me what they did to you based on what you've learned in terms of your injuries, the nature of the injury, the surgeries, if they did any, etc.
Yes, I've read my medical records quite extensively, and I always encourage people on Craig Cecilia's show, I always try to mention people should read the records because you just can't believe really what gets done. But I've read the operative report. Basically, they did a temporary shunt the morning that I went to Cape Canaveral Hospital, and almost immediately. And my parents got there around 10:30 in the morning, they said, and they were literally draining into a bucket. I mean, this was super emergency. We need to relieve the pressure surgery. 14 days later, they put in a full-time Codman programmable ventriculoperitoneal shunt set at 120 millimeters of water.
What does that mean?
It's the pressure setting for the shunt. It's a programmable shunt. There's Strata, there's Medtronic, there's different kinds of shunts. Some have only 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 settings, I think. Mine has 15 settings, so they can be from, I think, 30 millimeters of water all the way up to 180, and it goes in 10 increments, 10 millimeters of water. So if I'm, getting very dizzy and vomit or something, my doctor can check the setting on my shunt. Magnets on MRIs can do it, and they can reprogram the shunt back down or back up.
You still have the shunt in you?
Oh yeah, right here.
All right. Let's talk about specifically the only surgeries they did were to put the shunt in and then to replace it with the permanent one.
Well, immediately to put a temporary shunt in and relieve the brain bleed.
But they didn't do any additional brain surgery?
No, because it wasn't physical damage to the brain. This was a big-time bleed because the first hospital I went to couldn't open me up and relieve the pressure, so it was more of a compression.
Let's go back. 10:30, you've called for the ambulance, and you said the only thing you remember is the color of the ambulance. What is happening to you in the next 12 hours till your parents get there at 10:30 in the morning?
Bad things. I read that I vomited in the CAT scan. I read that Cape Canaveral Hospital, first 6 hours, I was asked by somebody if I was beaten, abused, thrown down the stairs, drank, drugged, got shot, beat up. I read that I was taking Ativan like candy. I read that I was starting a seizure a little bit. I vomited in the CAT scan around 2 in the morning. They ruled out abuse. I mean, I read stuff that's just, they just kept me alive. A lot of drugs, a lot of falling apart, basically.
You only went to Cape Canaveral Hospital. You weren't air flighted to somewhere else?
I couldn't be air flighted because of the weather.
So was Cape Canaveral a level 1 trauma center?
No, because they didn't have a neurosurgeon.
So what happens with, over time, that you're in basically the wrong place? They
called Titusville, and they got a reply of either a bed, no doctor, or a doctor, no bed. They got the same type of reply from Melbourne, Florida hospital, and then the trauma center in Orlando gets the majority of, in Florida anyway, I've been told, the head injuries, and they just, I don't know, they didn't want me to go that far.
And they had to put you in a land ambulance.
Right, and then Daytona was called once during this time, and they said it's just too far away. They're further than Orlando, and Melbourne was just south, and Titusville was just north, like the next town over both ways.
So do you stay in Cape Canaveral Hospital the whole time then?
I stayed there from around 11:30 or midnight till about 6:30, 6:24 in the morning, I think I read, and they put me back in the ambulance, and they just...
To where?
Daytona. Halifax Hospital.